My name is Jovita Mercado. I'm from Yakima, Washington, and I'm currently studying at the University of Washington for art. My artwork is social political, and I'm a Chicana artist. So I think that central workers are people that really make this world a reality. They are the laborers, and in most cases, they're people that don't choose to be in that position. A lot of the times, essential workers are people that are low income, and in many cases they're people that are being forced to put their life at risk for the functionality of our capitalistic society. So I'm a Chicana and I come from Yakima, Washington. And for people that don't really know Yakima, most of the population consists of essential workers. And so most of my relatives growing up were essential workers. My dad at one point was a field worker. My mom for many years was a warehouse worker. And most of my friends' parents were also essential workers. So growing up, a lot of us were low income people. And there was also connected to that, there was a lot of violence because a lot of people felt stuck and they went outside like societal norms to try to make a means. And through my time from Yakima, I use my artwork kind of as a way to get an understanding and like a grappling of what happened there. And with that, just thinking of like the significance of essential workers and giving gratitude to those people and hopefully giving like an acknowledgement of what's going on in Yakima and hope that change could happen. So my artwork is very much a personal journey, um, and I'm now going to show my artwork. And the first piece I'm going to show is Viva La Raza. And I made this while I lived in Yakima in response to Trump's election in 2016. And I did this really to remind myself of the rich history that the Latinx population has had before and after the formation of this country. And to remind myself that those of my ethnicity, my friends and my family and myself are a vital part of this nation. And I try to do so by having the Aztec sun in the background, kind of reminding us of like how Aztlan existed in the United States before it was a nation. And then having the figures within the greenery represent farm workers and how the green leaves really represent like the resilience and strength of their labor. And then the child within the soils to express like the migrant workers and the labor that they put not just into nurturing the vegetation, but also the entire generation of people that exist in Yakima, and also all the like labor that they put into this nation. So really focusing on how undocumented migrant workers are really the backbone of my hometown and also of this nation. The next piece that I'm talking about is La Manzanita. I made this piece to kind of represent a symbol to narrate where I come from and who I am. The apple is supposed to represent Yakima because Yakima is the leading county in the nation for apple production. And the fetus within is supposed to represent the children and farm workers once again. And overall, I wanted this image to be like the labor of a farm worker and also to kind of give thanks to farm workers and essential workers that live in Yakima because they make the town what it is. Um, and then my next piece is La Manzanita Mala, and um, this is my 3D adaptation of the last piece, where I kind of take the space of the child, and then I kind of manipulated the clay to look as if it's decaying around me, so it's kind of warping and caving in on itself. And then I made it large enough to fit my body, and I kind of wanted it to like force an interaction and force to be like noticed, and with that I also made it very vibrant to not be ignored. And like a part of this piece is that I collected several news articles from Yakima and I printed them on the surface of my skin. Some of these articles were of strangers and others were of people I once knew. The article that has impacted me the most I printed on my back, and this was of my father's ICE report. And I decided to print it on my skin to kind of denormalize the acts of violence that occur so often in Yakima. When you're living there and you're seeing so many news articles, it kind of becomes one and you kind of become numb towards it. So I decided to kind of put a body behind what was going on and really centralize myself in the telling of that story and I enlarged the words that really stuck with me to like emphasize the impact. And I made this piece to really spread an awareness of what's occurring in Yakima, but at the end of it, I feel like I gave myself a better understanding of my hometown and felt more empathy towards it. This piece is Una Ofrenda para David Cruz, and I made this around July, and it's like a collaborative piece that I made with Gustavo Martinez. But it's through this program that UW has that's called Strange Coupling, where they pair up students with existing artists. And he made the centerpiece with the Bihin, and I kind of developed like a virtual ofrenda around it. And I made this piece during the Yakima warehouse worker strikes. And David Cruz was a warehouse worker from Allen's Bros Incorporated that passed away from the coronavirus that was fighting for better working conditions, and I put him within the piece. This piece is an ofrenda, an offering to David Cruz, but to all the other Latinx workers within the Yakima County, and to really think about how the coronavirus has impacted Yakima essential workers. Within this piece, I have a close-up, and it's of apple, and this details kind of reveals the really long and dark history of our country's mistreatment of Mexican workers. The apple slice on the left side contains an image of laborers being fumigated with pesticides in the 1910s. This was the rise of eugenics. And then the apple slice on the right side contains a sign warning of pesticides, which you could like still see in a lot of agricultural fields still to this day. And for me, an apple, like any other produce, is like a symbol of migrant workers' labor. So I decided to collage these images of pesticides with the apple slices to express my understanding of how society's neglect has impacted this community over 100 years and has left them vulnerable to maltreatment and to violence, like being sprayed with pesticides on multiple occasions. I really want to emphasize that we can't separate the produce from the laborers and how we shouldn't think of these laborers without considering the systematic injustices they have endured. And then my very last piece that I'll be explaining is the sacrificial lambs of our pandemic. I began this piece thinking of how severe COVID-19 has impacted migrant workers during this pandemic. And around the time I made this piece, Yakima, Washington had the most cases of coronavirus, and they held this for several months. This is due to, like I said before, the large amount of essential workers making up most of the population. And I feel like this pandemic has really highlighted the segregation that exists within Washington's workforce. And also, I began making this piece thinking of the pandemic, but I stopped halfway. And it wasn't until Yakima and the entire state of Washington developed a really hazardous air quality that really pushed me to finish this piece, because it really emphasized how our state is neglecting farm workers and still having them working in those hazardous environments. So I made this piece to further emphasize the sacrifices that we put upon essential workers. Kindness is being able to see people's fragility and responding back with empathy. You can obviously see my artwork is constantly evolving. This is a working process. And I'm also so I'm an interdisciplinary visual artist. So like I'm also working in ceramics, painting, digital work. It's really expansive. And if you like to get to know my work better, you can follow me on Instagram at La Niña de Sol, which is like underscore every space until the very end. Um, and thank you for listening to me talk about my artwork.